Hello again. We're continuing with Life 101. This will be part E. I didn't give any kind of introduction last time because I was kind of busy. I wanted to go somewhere. And I guess we'll just jump into it. This book is pretty much longer than I thought it was going to be. Terence, some person from the 190 BC, said, "I bid him look into the lives of men as though into a mirror, and from others to take an example for himself." The mirror. When we look outside ourselves, we tend to evaluate. These evaluations tell us about the people and things around us. These evaluations also tell us about ourselves. Whatever we find true about people and things around us is also true about ourselves. When we evaluate anything outside of ourselves, what we are doing is looking into a mirror. The mirror reflects back to us information about ourselves. We might not always like what we see in the mirror. You might not always be comfortable with it. But if you want to learn about yourself more quickly, and that's what the techniques in this section of the book will help you do, looking at yourself in the mirror of people and things is a valuable tool. Remember the first time you heard your voice on a tape recorder or saw yourself on videotape? I don't sound like that. I don't behave that way. Meanwhile, all of your friends are saying, yes, this is what you sound like. Yes, this is precisely how you behave. Hey, the first time I saw myself on videotape, I wondered how I had any friends at all. In time, with repeated viewings, I learned to accept the images of myself on tape. And from that point of acceptance, I could begin making changes. I like to think of them as improvements. And so it is with the mirror of life. You might not like all you see in the mirror, but until you look into the mirror and accept all that you see about yourself, you will not be able to make changes or the improvements that you would like. Confucius said, "When we see men of a contrary character, we should turn inwards and examine ourselves." Oh, I have the book of Confucius, the Analytics, or however that's pronounced, and we'll get to it someday, if I can maintain this obsession. But I'm just not getting it done fast enough. Oh my gosh, I'm just not getting it done fast enough. I want to read faster. I want to read more. Anyway, let's say you look at someone and think, she is angry. I don't like that. It could be you, or could it be you that you don't like being angry? Or if you look at someone and say, he's scared to act. I wish he would just do it. Well, could there be something you're scared about? Something you wish you would just do? To evaluate and blame others does little good. What do we learn? We learn we can evaluate and blame. We probably already knew we could do that. Using the mirror, we see that we judge and blame ourselves. This is information we can do something about. We can, for example, stop judging and blaming ourselves, or accept the fact that we do judge and blame ourselves. Footnote says, most people, when they discover they judge and blame themselves, begin to judge and blame themselves for the fact that they judge and blame themselves. When they notice that they're judging and blaming themselves for judging and blaming themselves, they judge and blame themselves for judging and blaming themselves. And some people call that personal growth. Sometimes we have to shift our focus a bit to see what it is about ourselves that's being reflected by others. For example, you may look at someone smoking and not like it. But if you looked in that mirror, you might say, well, I don't smoke. How does that apply to me? What is it that you don't like about other people smoking? If it's unhealthy. Well, then question is, what do you do that's not healthy? Well, smoking is inconsiderate. What do you do that's inconsiderate? Smoking is a bad habit. What's your worst habit? It's a waste of money. How do you waste money? It shows no self-control. Where would you like more self-control? Get the idea? There's the other person's actions, and then there are the judgments we place on those actions. If we want to move from action, we judge. If we move from the action we judge and look at the judgment, we usually find similar judgment we make about ourselves. It is fun to extend this idea beyond people and include things. This car never works when I want it to. Well, what about you never works when you want it to? It always rains at the possible time. And what do you do at the worst possible time? Hey, this steak's too tough. And what about you could use a little tenderizing? The mirror gives us a lot of material to work on, which practicing, hold on. I must pause here. I dislike the automatic negative charge of this kind of thinking here. It is one thing to say to his idea is good, but it's only half good, because then you'll start on a round robin with yourself about, you'll actually trigger that he was just speaking of. So you'll learn further other ways to work with yourself and let go of the judgment itself, not just to improve yourself based on what you're judging and how it reflects upon you. There's also it's there, it's reflecting, let it go, it doesn't reflect. Okay? Alright. The mirror gives you a lot of material on which to practice acceptance, and this is so. You can learn to accept everything you already know about yourself, as well as everything you learn by looking into the mirror of other people's behavior. Your harshest judgments of others are the very ones that will benefit you most if you accept them about yourself. The mirror also focuses you back on something, that is someone, that you can do something about. Ever notice how little effect your judgments have on others? Which brings us to our first pop quiz. To continually have good advice for a world that for the most part is completely disinterested in, and sometimes hostile to, advice of any kind, A, is a waste of time. B, is a waste of good advice. C, tends to alienate self from others. D, tends to alienate others from self. E, promotes self-righteousness in the giver. F, promotes resentment in the receiver. Or G, all of the above. Guess who could really use all that good advice? For the answer, I quote Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change. And all the good advice you've been given, or that you've given to others, or would gladly give them if they only had the intelligence to ask, finally has a home. You. And as you're the only one you can really change, and the only one who can really use all your good advice is you. I'm sorry, I'm not reading it right. But you know what he said. I'm not reading it again. We're going to call this casual, lo-fi, imperfect human reads. Narration. With outtakes. And as you're the only one, oh never mind, we already read that, and we're not reading it again. Isn't it wonderful that the advice giver and the best user of the advice are the same person? If you're thinking, hey, I gotta tell so-and-so this, she needs to take some more of her own advice. Remember the mirror. It's probably you. In my spiritual journey, one of the first things I had to get over was when I read an insightful thing, and I would immediately try to read it and take in the interpretation as if it was for somebody else. Like, so-and-so needs to hear this, or if so-and-so heard this, this could happen to them. There's a person named Jesus. I know we're all trained to hate him, but he said something nice. He said, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Well, how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all this time there is a plank in yours? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Again, sometimes we must shift the focus and ask ourselves the larger question in order to see how the advice we give another would fit ourselves. If your advice to someone is to be more careful with his money, and you don't need that advice, then what do you need to be more careful about? If your advice to another is to exercise more and you already exercise a lot, well, what part of yourself, other than your body, could you do with another more exercise? When we look into the mirror of life and see all there is within ourselves that needs improvement, we know we're going to be at it for a long time, changing what we can and doing our best with what we can't, accepting and forgiving it all, whenever we remember to do so. I know, for example, that I'm really writing this book for myself, and if you care to look over my shoulder as I learn from my own good advice, you're most welcome. We also see that whenever we lash out at another, we're really lashing out at ourselves. In this context, to strike another is as silly as striking the bathroom mirror because it's giving us a reflection we don't like. If you think of other people as actually yourself, given whatever they have in their experience, it's simply awareness as them, and that's you, then you could find a place where hating on somebody is the very same as hating on your own self. And it's certainly true. When somebody's mad at you, well, they're mad because their ego is mad, and their ego is mad with themselves being disappointed, but they blame you. It's really, humans are fun. Of course, nobody watches this part. So all my private thoughts are never going to be known. Who cares? Okay, we can only pray that in our striking out that we don't hurt the mirror, especially when that mirror is another person. Could that be where the superstition, if you break a mirror, it's 7 years bad luck, comes from? Thus far, I've only talked about the glass darkly side of the mirror concept. It does have a lighter side. Mirrors also reflect what's good about us. All the people and things that you find loving, affectionate, caring, devoted, tender, and wonderful, compassionate, beautiful, adorable, magnificent, and sacred are simply mirroring to you those things about yourself. The lighter side of the mirror is sometimes more difficult for people to accept than the darker side. I can see that I'm impatient when I judge someone else for being impatient, you might say. But when I see the majesty of a mountain, what does that have to do with me? Everything. That purple mountain majesty is you too. In fact, it's not really in the mountain at all. What's in the mountain is rock. What we as humans project onto the mountain is majesty. That's one of the reasons the mirror concept works. Most of the time we're projecting something onto most everything. When the projection returns to us, we can see it as a reflection, which it is, or we can pretend that it's emanating from the thing we projected the reflection onto. The illusion that what we projected is coming from the thing we projected it onto is deceptive. We tend to get lost in the illusion, just as we tend to get lost in the illusion of the images projected on a movie screen. It's nonetheless an illusion, and the source of the projection at the movie theater is the projector. The source of things we think and feel about ourselves is ourselves. Using the mirror concept, we can begin to recognize the true source of the projections we send out. We begin to see that this person wasn't so bad after all. It was, in fact, what we were projecting onto him. We see that this other person wasn't so wonderful after all. We were merely projecting our wonderfulness upon her. The more you see it, the more you use it, the more you'll probably find the mirror concept works. This is an advanced tool for learning. There is, however, an advanced version of this. It's called relationships. Oh my. George Herbert in 1651 said, "The best mirror is an old friend." Relationships. I gave up on them. No, not entirely. Most people seek relationships to get away from themselves, but not eager learners. We use everything for our upliftment, learning, and growth, including relationships. Relationships can be one of the most amazing mirrors around. Some relationships are like funhouse mirrors. They reflect an image back to you, but it's liable to be distorted. Other relationships are like magnifying or reducing mirrors. They make everything seem larger or smaller. Some relationships are accurate mirrors of the darkness inside of us. Others accurately reflect the light. Occasionally, we find one that reflects both. That's the relationship we either flee from or grapple to our hearts with hoops of steel. I'm using the term relationship in the broadest sense. Relationships truly take place inside ourselves. We have a relationship with anyone or anything we encounter. Have you ever read a book by an author that you've never met and still felt a relationship? Or felt close to a movie character, knowing the character never even existed? What we do inside ourselves about the people and things we choose to be in relationship with can be one of the greatest learning tools we can use, especially when combined with the mirror. This lays the foundation for not just learning, but for enjoyable, productive relationships with others. Schiller, in 1797, said, "What the inner voice says will not disappoint the hoping soul." Right. I once heard somebody say that the English language is the only language that cannot use a double negative. No, you can use a double negative to mean positive, but you can't use two positives to make a negative. And the student said, "Yeah, right." All right. I need this cigarette, people. I know it's not affecting your health, but we're not going to read much longer anyway. It doesn't take much inner listening to know what's in there. This chapter is called Inner Voices. There are many voices speaking, singing, shouting, and whispering. At times, I'm sure there's the entire Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Some of the voices speak. Others flash images. Some communicate by feelings, while others communicate through a sense of knowing. When I say voices, I include all of these, and any forms of communication I failed to mention. These voices have information, all of it useful, and some of you can use by acting on, some you can use by doing precisely the opposite. It's a matter of knowing whether or not the given voice is on your side. But how do you know? Listen. Listen might not be the best word. Perceive might be a better word. Or look within, or be aware of your inner process. I'll use listen. But it goes along with the analogy of voices. But know that when I say listen, I also mean watch, sense, perceive, and be aware of what's going on inside. Start by listening and keeping track of which voice says what. And you can assign them characters if you like. Here are 4 of my inner favorites. The critic. I see this voice as a vulture. Pick, 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 nag, nag, nag. Nothing anyone does is good enough, except occasionally when somebody else does something undeniably outstanding, then the vulture says, "Well, you'll never do anything like that." Doom and gloom fly with the vulture. It feeds on unworthiness, and its droppings are the doubts, fears, and judgments that keep us from moving toward our goals. The praiser. The praiser I see as an eagle. It proudly tells us all the wonderful things we are, have, and do. It generously praises the being, accomplishments, and activities of others. Hey, that's the one that lets us know that we're worthy, no matter what, and that our worth does not need to be proven, earned, or defended. We're worthy just because we are. And all those are fine just the way it is. And all that we are is fine just the way it is. It flies on the wings of grace and gratitude. It nurtures our very soul. The dummy. The dummy is a turkey. It's the one who answers quickly and loudly, "I don't know," to almost every question. The turkey is the one that keeps us doing all those stupid things we do and then says, "Darn, I knew better." We may know better, but no one told the turkey. Turkeys do not fly. If you leave them out in the rain, they'll drown. They have nothing to be thankful for on Thanksgiving. The grower. The grower is like an egg. An egg, yes. As W.S. Gilbert said, as innocent as a newly laid egg. That's one of the attributes of growth. Each moment is new, fresh, and innocent. An egg also contains all the potential for future growth. As Hans Christian Andersen pointed out, his own image was no longer the reflection of a clumsy, dirty, gray bird, ugly and offensive. He himself was a swan. Being born in a duckyard does not matter. If only you are hatched from a swan's egg. Our grower knows who we are and the kind of bird in the egg, and it's not a vulture. It has sufficient self-love to keep itself warm and cozy while gestating. It knows the hatching will take place at precisely the right moment. It is content and divinely patient until then. As Robert Burns wrote of his egg, the voice of nature loudly cries, in many a message from the skies, that something in us never dies. It's a good idea to listen to what the voices say, not to how they say it. As Lord Byron reminds us, the devil hath not, in all his quivers choice, an arrow for the heart like a sweet voice. And Freud, a century later, wrote, "The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest well until it has gained a hearing. Ultimately, after endlessly repeated rebuffs, it succeeds. This is one of the few points in which one may be optimistic about the future of mankind, but in itself signifies not a little." I could have done him with a German accent, but I didn't want to mess it up. If all these birds in our brains are too much for you, perhaps you could use a metaphor of tuning a radio or changing channels on a television. Once you tune into your own network of wisdom, you'll have guidance that's sure, clear, and direct. Love songs of the New Kingdom, a type of writing that was written in 1080 BC, said, "The voice of a turtle dove speaks out. It says, 'Day breaks. Which way are you going? Lay off, little bird. Must you so scold me? I found my lover on his bed, and my heart was sweet to excess.'" And Shakespeare, "Thank you for your voices. Thank you, your most sweet voices." And, well, we'll stop it for today. Good night.